Okay. It's like I'm the only one here. There I am. All right. So here we go.
All right. So here we go.
That was quality control. All right. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and start typing them in because I'm ready. In the meantime, I was going to talk a little bit about, well, not a little, maybe a lot, if need be, about the next story that we're reading for next week, the red convertible, and then any other questions that are kind of coming up along the way. So, like, the point in all of this is to write a paper. Don't forget that. And the paper is going to be a 5-paragraph, not literally a 5-paragraph essay, but a paper structured like a 5-paragraph essay. So there's going to be an introduction, 3 or 4 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And so as you read, keep that in mind, that the end game in all of this is for you to write a really good paper. The best papers, I have samples actually, I think in week 2 or week 3, probably week 3, go through all the basics of like what a paper kind of looks like for this class, especially the first 2 papers. I have a lot of samples in general in this class, but particularly for the first 2 papers. So you'll get to see a few of those. We're going to be using MLA formatting, but I'm going to try to make that pretty easy on this first paper because it gets complicated towards the end of this class, and so there'll be more instruction. But I really want you to show me that you have your own ideas about how or what you think these stories mean. And there's not really any clear answers. They're meant to be ambiguous. So, hi, Maisie. Yeah, I'm going to teach you guys MLA formatting. So, like, you're in the face-to-face class, so you'll be getting a pretty heavy dose. In my online classes, it's actually very hard to teach. I usually I had a video, but it's not accessible, so I'll be making another one. But yeah, it's pretty hard. There's like 2 or 3 sites that everybody should be using. One is Nightsite, which is KNIGHT CITE. Knight's literally like a knight or royal knight or whatever. Nightsite CITE. That works pretty well. EasyBib, I think most students use EasyBib, and so that one's pretty self-explanatory. I have links to both for my online students. And I'll be showing my students in my face-to-face classes how to use that as well. So it really is like it's in-text citations that are kind of the bigger headache for most students, and for me as well. But the end notes, the works cited page citations aren't too bad. So yes, MLA for all of the papers. We may use APA for essay for it. Let's see. I think those are the main things to keep in mind with the papers. Read the stories, read them carefully. In my face-to-face classes, we're kind of going through them. We're going through hard copies. It's easy to do that in a face-to-face class. It's not in an online class. You have to print it off or whatever, but you'll be pulling very specifically from the stories, like quotes, literal, like actual chunks of the story will end up in your paper. So start looking for things you're going to use now. And it's just, and start looking at the prompts. Go back to if you look at the assignment, the essay 1 assignment sheet, I think it's in week 2 for the online classes. Just go through those questions and start thinking about which ones you would answer for what story, and think in terms of like 3 or 4 things you could write about in answering that question. So, any other questions? There's only 4 of you, so well, actually, there's probably 2 because there's 1 of me, but I'm going to check actually. So one of the things I've been wondering about is how many students know they have a YouTube account through LCC. I don't think it's as many as I thought. I'm not supposed to have one either. Well, I guess no one's stopping me, but I have a student account. Normally faculty don't. We have a separate we use Microsoft Office, but I don't know that everybody's discovered it yet. And it's so you're like, that's why it's my full name instead of, I have another account, a private account, but I have a username and I'm a little more anonymous, but with this, it's like, there it is, my username. So I don't think anybody really knows that. I only just recently discovered it, so. All right, any other questions? There's one. Hi, Melanie. We went over the questions in class that are online for week 1. I just want to make sure. Oh yeah, those are not due. No, so Melanie, you're gonna find like in my face-to-face classes, I use D2L as like storage. Probably shouldn't, but it's just really convenient to have them, like to have the questions, let's say in this case, on D2L. That way, if someone misses class, I don't have to make a copy. I can just say go to D2L. But I've actually already given you credit for those, so you're off the hook. Actually, I guess, yeah, you're off the hook. Any other questions? The red convertible, we're going to go over first, and then cathedral second. So if you are trying to decide which one you're going to use or read first, read them both. They're both short. Yeah, cathedral takes a while to actually go over. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it does. So, but we'll start with the red convertible. Good question. I know. Why am I up after 9? I'm barely awake. I actually dozed off for a few minutes before I did this, but I don't have kids running around right now, so everybody's sleeping. So yeah, it's pretty wild. Any other questions? I probably look like I was sleeping. Look like I got hit by a truck. This is kind of funny because everybody who's logged in right now is in my face-to-face class. And these are specifically these were actually targeted to my online students. So how's that for irony? My face-to-face students are my most diligent. By the way, just as a side note, I think I have all your names down in the face-to-face class. I'm pretty excited. I don't think I've ever been that fast memorizing names. Of course, I only really have 23 to remember. I usually have about 60 or between 60 and 90. But this time I only have I have literally 23. So no excuses this time. Are you guys have any of you read Cathedral yet? I'm thinking no. You didn't have to. I'm just curious because I'm always shocked at what my students have to say about it. Shocked, like in a very positive way. It's just a story I wouldn't think it like. The red convertibles too. There's stories that are about your grandparents' generation. Um, Certainly, in like my parents' generation, pains me to say. Uh, and yet, I don't know. My students always seem to really get it, especially Cathedral. That's not a really simple story. In fact, that's a really difficult story, and yet my students really like it and want to know more about it and spend a lot of time figuring it out. So, pretty wild. Raymond Carver's an enigma anyway. He's just a strange guy, the author. So maybe that's part of the reason. Any other questions? I'm up to 5 now. I'm pretty excited. I've got a whiteboard. I forgot to get it out. It's right behind me. But so if I need to explain something, I have a whiteboard. If you have a really specific question. Okay, well, I'm gonna just log into our D2L account. I've got to do it on another computer, so I'm like multitasking here. I'm sure this is just super entertaining to watch. Is there another paper due tonight? Danielle, there is not another paper due tonight other than the diagnostic. Yeah, I try not to require. I don't like students working in 2 papers at a time anyway. But I don't usually require 2 major writing or even 2 minor writing assignments in the same week. So nope, just a diagnostic, and don't like overthink the diagnostic. I just want to see. That's kind of the diagnostic is more about how you think and less about how you write. I'll know how you write after the first paper. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a couple of things as long as you're here and you're asking questions. The first thing I think I will address is MLA question. And I'm going to tell you right where to go. And I can't actually look. The downside of these chats is I can't show you my screen. Whereas if I make a Kaltura video, I can. So I'll make a Kaltura video on this anyway. But depending on which class you're in, but my face-to-face and my online classes are kind of the same structurally. So they're almost exactly the same. I just leave out discussion boards basically for my face-to-face classes. But if you are in the content section and there is a section, I think it's helpful links. Yeah, helpful links for the, it kind of covers everything. I have the link for Nightsite, EasyBib, the Purdue Online Writing Lab. And then the one other thing that I keep forgetting to tell everybody to do is to download Grammarly. Whether you're in a face-to-face class or an online class, Grammarly, like, it checks everything. Some of you probably already have it. It's free. It works really well. But in an online class, it checks your discussion board postings and things like that. So it's a really good thing to have. I have a Grammarly is one thing. The other thing that I use a lot is called the Hemingway app. I don't have a link on D2L right now. I usually push one out in one of the weeks, right around the time a final draft is due. But the Hemingway app is a really good, like, really helpful thing. It's a little overwhelming, and so I usually spend some time in class going over it. But those are really both good things. Your spell check, if you have Microsoft Word, your spell check, grammar check is decent. I think, like, for a semester, buying the upgraded version of Grammarly isn't a bad idea either. If you want to spend, I think it's pretty expensive. I think it's like $10 a month. But if your grammar is not good and no one's around to proofread, Grammarly the Grammarly upgrade is worth it. It'll make a difference on your grade. So those are just two things. Grammarly has just been like a godsend for me. I love it because I'm just such a lazy discussion board poster sometimes. It checks my postings. So the other thing is the textbook is done. It's like completely finished. And so I'll have more, like for my face-to-face students, I'll have more information on this quickly, but soon. But right now, we're probably like 2 or 3 days away from it being available in a hard copy form. So if you wanted to print off a copy of Expression and Inquiry, you could. Otherwise, there's still a copy of it in D2L, but it's old, and the table of contents in it, I believe, is incomplete, and it has a few problems. So, but everything's done now. I don't think there's much left to do except publish it. So we're only a week late. We're pretty excited. The free Microsoft Word link. There's one there was a link through LCC, and it was not nearly as good as everybody said it was. The one that I tell students to use is in helpful course info in the class, and it's OpenOffice free downloadable Office software. So it's like it's a poor man's Microsoft Office, very poor because it's free. The Microsoft link, the dreaded link, when I used the LCC free Microsoft Office suite, it was like online only, I think, or something like that. You could basically get Outlook and whatever, and like the Outlook cloud do the same stuff. So the better one is OpenOffice, because it's the full suite, and then instead of just Microsoft Word, and then two, it's you can download it, and it's much better. It's compatible with D2L as well. So anyway, to answer your point or your question, helpful course info, that's where you'll find the OpenOffice link. Be careful, because if you don't use my link, you'll find another link that has a virus attached to it. So that's happened a few times. But my link is the correct one in helpful course info. All right. So for next week, if you're wondering, in addition to Cathedral and the Red Convertible, we're going to be reading Sonny's Blues, and Sonny's Blues is a lot longer than the first three. It's quite a few pages. It's not a really difficult read. It's just long. A lot happens. It's more, I mean, it's probably 20, 25 pages, but just keep that in mind. Give yourself a little extra time to read that one. It's not one you can bang out in 20 minutes when you're half asleep. It's one of those you want to spend some time on. And then read the Spark Notes. It's not as, the story is a lot more cut and dry. It's much clearer and much more evident than some of the other stories we read. It's very easy to follow, and the point is much more obvious, though I don't think it's totally obvious. So just keep that in mind when you read Sonny's Blues. It's a very different story than what we've been reading, and it's longer, but not a whole lot longer. Next week, at the end of week 2, we're going to have an exploratory draft due. So if you're having any trouble with the stories, or if you have a story you think you want to write about, make sure that this week you spend some time, 1, thinking about what you're going to write about, and then 2, thinking about how so think about the story, and then think about the question. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I can't get it out. Probably because it's after 9 o'clock at night. So story and then question. Have a good idea what those are going to be before you write the exploratory draft. We'll go over the structure a little bit in class. The exploratory draft is sort of an impromptu writing. It's not anything real dense or difficult. It's not supposed to be difficult. I mean, writing's never super easy, I guess, but it's much more like answer the question, answer the prompt, try to specifically reference the book as best you can, but you're not using MLA formatting and it's not as nearly as formal. So that's the main difference with the exploratory draft. I have 3 drafts that are due for the first paper. That way, you get 3 sets of input. So you'll write an exploratory draft, and then I will give you comments, and then you go back and you work on it. Then you submit a rough draft. Again, I give you comments, and then finally you submit the final draft, and then I will give you your final set of comments on the final draft. So you get 3 sets of comments. And that's sometimes, I won't do that for all the papers, but for the first one especially, it kind of requires it. So those of you in my face-to-face class, we're actually going to go over the paper one-on-one too. So you're going to be so sick of me at the end of the semester. But if you write well, it'll all be worth it, right? So that's week 2. And I'm just going to go over week 3, and then if there's no more questions, I'll go ahead and put this live stream to an end. And I want to talk about week 3 because that is going to be the rough draft is going to be due at the end of week 3. So for those of you in my online class, especially, it's going to be important. So when you write the rough draft and the exploratory draft, you're going to want to go back to, it's called the Glossary of Literary Terms. I'm going to work those into my face-to-face classes, but I don't have a chance to do that with my online classes. So if you're in my online classes, take a look at those and just keep some of those ideas in mind. There were some really good videos for on writing good papers about literature. I couldn't use them anymore because they're not accessible. They didn't have subtitles, so I don't use those anymore. I'll see what else I can find, and I'll also probably produce a video as well. So I also have in week 3 the citations for the short stories. So for your works cited page, in addition to whatever else you use, if you use SparkNotes, I want you to actually cite that. Or if you use the biography, a web page with a biography of Tilly Olson, I want you to use that as well. But the actual citations for the stories, those are all actually in D2L. They're in week 3. Just keep that in mind. It seems like about half of my students forget, even though I tell them that it's there. They forget, and then they try to make up a citation, and sometimes they're very successful, and other times it's way off. So the other thing is I was planning on sending everybody to the Writing Center, either virtually or in a face-to-face meeting, and I might hold off on that. The Writing Center has changed, and I don't know how feasible it is to handle everybody that's coming in. So there'll be more on that in the future. If you haven't heard, it's now called the Writing Studio. It's a different format. I don't know that they're really doing one-on-one appointments anymore, and that was kind of the whole point of sending you there. So they've made some changes to the Writing Center, and it's just not quite as, students are not reporting that it's as helpful as it once was. So I'll get back to you on that. It would be just as productive to meet with me, if not more so anyway. But so that's week 3. The paper is actually not due until the end of week 4. So let's see, week 3 starts January 20th. So the rough draft is due the 27th, and that would mean that the final draft would be due February 3rd. So we've got some time. Got some time to work on this one. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm waiting patiently while you type, assuming you're going to type. Okay, I'm going to put this live stream out of its misery then. If you have any other questions, I'll see most of you on Tuesday, so you can just ask me then. All right. All right, you guys take care, and I'll see you Tuesday.